वेलकम फ्रेंड्स। आज हम डिस्कस करेंगे एक लेटेस्ट अपडेट आया है रिगार्डिंग रूल 37 कैपिटल ए which we have to understand along with section number 41 and section 16 2C of the GST Act. Friends, 16 2C is the original provision in the statute in the CGST Act which basically mandates a condition for availment of a valid input tax credit. 16.2 basically prescribes a number of conditions, and 16.2C is one of the conditions which we have to satisfy before taking input tax credit. Or rather, we have to take input tax credit on self-assessment basis, and provided all the conditions of 16.2 are satisfied with. So 16.2C in simple words says that if you are taking input tax credit as a buyer or as a recipient of goods or services, the tax which you have paid to your supplier, that must go to the government. The point looks very simple, that buyer is making payment of tax to the supplier and supplier is making that payment to the government exchequer account. So far so good, and it looks logical that ultimately if the tax which the buyer has paid to the supplier, if it has gone to the funds of the government of India, then only your input tax credit will be valid. So the buyer is an innocent person, is making correct payment of tax to the supplier, and the supplier as an agent to the government, between the government and the buyer, withholds that payment with him and does not pay to the government. So what is the fault of this innocent buyer? So the government says, no, we don't know. The buyer has to take a informed call while making an agreement or a transaction with his supplier. So if supplier is not making payment of tax to the government, the input tax credit of buyer will be restricted. And 16.2C says that subject to the provisions of 41, if tax has not been paid by supplier to the government, the input tax credit won't be allowed to the buyer. 41 then says that in case the tax has not been paid by the supplier, it has to be reversed along with interest. The tax and interest shall be reversed. Tax shall be reversed and interest shall be paid in cash through electronic cash ledger. So now we are coming to the 41, section number 41, and 41 says that the procedure or the mechanism shall be prescribed through rules, and then we have rule number 37A, that is getting powers from the section number 41. So friends, 41 is the, you can say, the master provision for 37A, and the super master provision is 16.2C. So far so good. Now GSTN has basically issued an advisory, and in that advisory they are saying on 14th of November, they are saying that from financial year 22-23 they are going to put a check and balance to make compliance with 37 capital A. So if your buyers are not making payment, if the suppliers are not making payment to the government, the GSTN will automatically populate the amount of input tax credit that has to be reversed in compliance with 37 capital A. And this has to be done in the October 2023 return that has to be filed by November 2023. So friends, now I am coming to the legal aspects. 16.2C says that buyer won't be allowed tax credit unless it is paid by the supplier. we have an excellent judgment of Honorable Delhi High Court in the case of on-quest merchandising, wherein the Honorable High Court has categorically stated that if the transactions between the buyer and the suppliers are genuine, there is no connivance between the buyer and the supplier, the buyer cannot be punished for the sole default of the supplier. So this judgment comes to the rescue of 16(2)(c). This judgment was rendered in context of Section 9(2)(g) of the DVAT Act 2005. And the similarly worded Section 16(2)(c) is placed in the GST Act also. Further, 41 has been amended with effect from 1st of October 2022. So how it can be made applicable retrospectively to the entire financial year? 37A has been introduced from 26th of December 2022. Again, you are basically implementing provisions practically through GSTN with retrospective effect, and there is no provision existing on the date of enactment, or rather the date of implementation of the provisions. You are trying to implement these provisions from 1/4/2022 to 31st of March 2023, wherein the provisions came later on, very late. Now, I'm telling you the last ambiguity in the provisions. The last ambiguity is that the 37A says, friends, that if there is one invoice, for example, I have one invoice of 1/4/2022, I have taken input tax credit. My supplier has to file his GSTR 3B till 30th of September 2023 in order that I make compliance with rule number 37A. So 30th of September 2023 is the cutoff date for my supplier to file his GSTR 3B. Now, suppose if it is not filed till 30th of September 2023, and they are saying that the supplier has to pay 3B, that supplier has to pay this tax only through 3B. They are not considering DRC 03. The DRC 03 is also one of the mode for making payment, but they are not considering that. So this is again another ambiguity in the provisions. Why you are only saying that the tax has to be paid by the 3B? Why it cannot be paid through DRC 03? That is again an important question that will be tested in the courts of law. So this was an attempt to decode the latest provisions related to 37 capital A, section number 41 and section number 16(2)(c) of the GST Act. Thank you very much for sparing your valuable time. Have a nice day. Thank you very much.